So here I am, back with another video, glossing over the Classroom of the Elite anime and its creative liberties from the source material. This time I'm going through episodes 6, 7 and 8 of season 3, which covers volume 10 of the light novel. Let's get down to it. First up, we have the class vote special exam announcement. In the light novel, the notice of a supplementary exam was made the day after the final written exam results were released. Also, Yamauchi was a lot less vocal in the light novel. His disruption to the class was always apparent, but this season it feels like the anime really wanted you to hate him. So I can only guess that while anime onlys might have been a little surprised about his intentions, they were definitely happy seeing his plan fail miserably. Next up, we have Horikita, Ruin and Ainakoji's discussion, and yes, I do have a problem with it. Firstly, in the light novel, this all happened in the canteen along with the Ainakoji group to witness in the distance. I like the Ainakoji group moments, so I really don't like that most of them get chalked off in the anime. Yes, they got to prioritize the important moments, so consider this me moaning. Even more so when I can make a calculated guess why they chose to have anime Ruin in the library when Ainakoji and Horikita were looking for him. In the light novel, Hiyori speaks with Ainakoji about Ryuin and how he actually spends more time in the library, to which he was able to deduce that the book he was reading in the canteen at the time was in fact borrowed. I don't mean to sound pretentious, but taking away little moments and threads like that just makes the show a little less sophisticated than the story actually is. Couple that with the PowerPoint presentation animation, yeah, very annoying. Oh, and the convo itself was too long for my liking. In fact, I think this might be the only scene in the whole show where there was more said in the anime than in the corresponding moment in the light novel. Next, we have Ichinose speaking to Ainakoji. That itself was fine. The person who interrupted was a surprise. Of course, it was Sakayanagi, but in the light novel, the invading party was Asahina, who essentially tells him about that secret deal between Ichinose and Nagumo. I get that convo between Sakayanagi and Ainakoji needed to be fitted somewhere for the arc to make sense. However, couldn't Lurch have swapped our main character's order of interaction with Sakayanagi and Asahina, like the way it originally was in the light novel? The interactions are pretty much clustered together in the anime anyway, save that one class scene, one being at the end of one episode and the other being at the beginning of the next. So Asahina approaches Ainakoji and makes two comments about Ichinose. Obviously there's more said, but one of those comments hint that she may have seen them together at least once, and the other that his name may or may not have been mentioned more than once between them. So when the following convo between Ainakoji and Ichinose happens, and she's like, "Oh, I know who told you about that deal," I'm sure some of you anime onlys might have been taken aback by that, or at least the ones that actually care. This is an example of probably the most frustrating thing about the anime, other than the low tier animation. The change has been made, but then there's still a disconnect somewhere even though the end result is the same as in the light novel, forcing the viewers to make an assumption that hasn't been conveyed clearly. Of course, the light novel readers know more of the context behind the scenes. In this case, the clues are that Ichinose is popular and Asahina said what she said about her to Ainakoji, even though we've never seen the two girls interact in the show. But it was clear in the light novel that at that moment where Asahina interrupted the conversation between the two first Jews was what allowed Ichinose to deduce who relayed the information about the exclusive deal about the extra private points to Ainakoji. The next moment, Hirata speaking to Ainakoji about the exam. Ainakoji is a bit more impartial than in the light novel, which coincides with Hirata speaking with somewhat less desperation than in his light novel iteration. They also meet and chat a fair bit before they reach the dorms. Specifically, Hirata tries to ask again if there's another solution, to which Ainakoji instead cuts him off, saying, "Haven't you lost sleep because you already know the answer?" I was hoping that they'd transfer over that piece of dialogue, but they decided to do away with that. So, although it's somewhat accurate, this scene gets marked down for being seriously shallow in showing Hirata's emotional state in that moment, and not including Ainakoji's dialogue that actually fits his character. But again, explaining that point is for another video. Next, we have the days before the class vote special exam. This is where a lot of things get segmented as recent flashbacks and current time moments. There are a few changes, but I don't have any new complaints about how they could have used the limited available screen time, though I might as well add context or note the changes in a few moments anyway. For instance, Ainakoji and Kushida don't actually meet up. Right after Kuroizawa notifies Ainakoji that he's the class target for censure votes, he simply calls her. She spills the beans, but in a very roundabout way after Ainakoji throws in some bait by displaying some helplessness. Ainakoji coming out with his answer straight away after Kushida let the cat out the bag threw me off a bit because again, that's not how it originally happened. However, I'm not exactly mad that they decided to do it this way because it can now imply that he wanted to spark a reaction to solidify his quick deductive reasoning. He certainly seemed sharper intuitively, at least in this instance, in comparison to moments where he happens to be in the right place at the right time. Yes, another point for another video. Horikita's speech to the class the day before the vote. Apart from things being watered down, there's one other thing I have to point out. Chabashira sensei is straining her neck for a really long time to listen to Horikita's speech. It's only in the next episode that we actually see that she's changed position. Studio Lurch are never going to beat the PowerPoint presentation allegations with things like that out in the open. Next, we have the voting results. Not much to say here, though in the light novel, after he comes to terms with his own fate, Yamauchi crumples on the spot, cries and then leaves, but the change in the short sequence of events is fine. You can see that Lurch made sure this scene and the last I mentioned were labelled as key moments in the early stages of production, leaving in the notes something along the lines of put more emphasis in the shadows, more panning and zooming effects. Next up, Ayanokoji and Ryuin at the announcement board. In the light novel, Katsuragi is also there for a brief moment. Ryuin takes the opportunity to antagonize him about losing a friend to this exam and remind him that their contract of having all Class A students transfer points to him is still active. Katsuragi leaves, the remaining two have their discussion along with fitting flashback pieces. It was only after Ayanokoji received a phone call from Ichinose and answered it was when Ryuin left the scene. And that's about all I've got for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It helps this video reach out to others who might enjoy this, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See ya.